Sworn in. The Senate begins to prepare for the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump. We're on Capitol Hill. School prayer. The White House unveils a plan regarding students and religion. We have reaction. Fighting for the faithful. The U.S. Ambassador for International Religious Freedom tells us ways to help persecuted Christians around the world. And an act of confidence. Pope Francis gives us a few simple words that will always get God's attention. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, January 16th, 2020.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. The United States Senate has sent a summons to President Donald Trump for his impeachment trial. He has until 6 p.m. this Saturday to answer the summons. The trial is set to begin in the Senate on Tuesday afternoon. Catholic news agency's Matt Hadra reports now from Capitol Hill. Matt?
Good evening, Tracy. 2 senators from each party escorted the Chief Justice onto the Senate floor this afternoon, where he was sworn in to preside over the impeachment trial. John Roberts then administered the oath to all senators and marks the beginning of only the 3rd trial in U.S. history to remove a president.
7 lawmakers prosecuting the impeachment charges make the solemn walk across the Capitol from the House to the Senate.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons are commanded to keep silent on pain of imprisonment, while the House of Representatives is exhibiting to the Senate of the United States articles of impeachment against Donald John Trump, President of the United States.
Lead manager and chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, read the charges, while the other House prosecutors stood in a row to his side.
Resolved that Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and that the following articles of impeachment be exhibited to the United States Senate.
Not long after, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court John Roberts was led into the Senate chamber, escorted by senators from both parties. He was sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear that in all things appertaining to the trial of the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States, now pending, you will do impartial justice according to the Constitution and the laws, so help you God?
I do.
God bless you.
And in turn, administered the oath to the senators.
Do you solemnly swear that in all things appertaining to the trial of the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States, now pending, you will do impartial justice according to the Constitution and laws, so help you God?
The Senate is now set to begin the trial proceedings on Tuesday.
The events are expected to be a test not only of Donald Trump's presidency, but also of the 3 branches of government and the separation of powers. Tracy?
Catholic news agency's Matt Hadra reporting for us tonight from Capitol Hill. Thank you, Matt. Well, the president calls the impeachment a hoax as new information emerges about his actions towards Ukraine that led to charges against him. White House correspondent Mark Irons continues our team coverage.
Tracy, today the Government Accountability Office said that the White House violated federal law by withholding security assistance to Ukraine. Here's how the White House is responding.
I haven't had a chance to read that report, but I'm very glad that Ukraine got its aid and got it within the deadline. And it's much higher than they ever got under the Obama administration.
Counselor to the President Kellyanne Conway answering questions this morning about the GAO report, coming as more information has been released by Democratic lawmakers. That information shows Lev Parnez, an associate of President Donald Trump's personal attorney Rudy Giuliani, communicating about the removal of Marie Yovanovitch as the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Last night, Parnez shared his story. He says the president and top officials knew about withholding aid to Ukraine.
So Giuliani knew everything you were doing?
Everything.
You're saying Vice President Pence knew?
Well, I don't know if my vice president knew everything we were doing. I'm sure he was.
But he knew about a quid pro quo.
Well, of course, he knew. Everybody knew. Everybody that was close to Trump knew that this was a thorn in the side and this was a serious situation.
Today, the White House pushes back.
Nobody on TV like that is under oath, and he obviously is desperate to get attention, which you will all shower him with promptly, I'm sure. And he's somebody who was arrested and indicted on some serious criminal, campaign finance charges.
Today, the White House is also pushing back against impeachment. Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham blames Democrats for obstruction of Congress and abuse of power, the same accusations they've made against President Trump. At the White House, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, during an event in the Oval Office, Mark was able to ask President Trump a question about the 2020 election and why Catholics should vote for him.
What's your message to the millions of Catholics in the United States? Why should they vote for you in the upcoming election?
Well, I have a great relationship with Catholics. I've done so much for Catholics. You take a look at the abortion issue, you take a look at many of the issues, Mexico City, you take a look at so many of the different issues. My relationship with Catholics and the Catholic Church has been very, very good.
The president mentioned, as you heard, the Mexico City policy. It blocks U.S. federal funding from promoting or providing abortion services overseas. The president is talking about his opposition to abortion a week before the annual March for Life in Washington. And we'll have more from this Oval Office event later for you in our show. Police in Ukraine say they have opened an investigation into the possibility that the former U.S. ambassador to the country came under illegal surveillance. Ukraine officials do not know who was allegedly following Marie Yovanovitch before she was recalled from her post last May. They also say they're not interfering in the political affairs of the United States. The Order of the Holy Sepulchre welcomed Cardinal Fernando Filoni as the new Grand Master today.
We create the essential elements for peace, for peaceful coexistence. No peaceful coexistence, no future. No future for the Holy Land, no the future for the Middle East, no future for Christians, no future for any other.
Cardinal Filoni spoke about his mission as he enters the new position. He replaces Cardinal Edwin O'Brien from Baltimore, Maryland, who has been the Grand Master for 8 years. The Order of the Holy Sepulchre is a Catholic order of knighthood under the protection of the Holy See. Their mission is to strengthen the Christian life of its members and to support the Christian presence in the Holy Land. A Catholic bishop in Scotland is accused of plagiarism in his doctoral dissertation. Bishop Stephen Robson says that he never intentionally committed an act of plagiarism, but adds that he will accept whatever consequences come from the accusation. Bishop Robson is the head of the Diocese of Dunkeld, Scotland. A former Catholic priest is on trial in France accused of sexually abusing dozens of minors between 1971 and 1991. Church officials in their own tribunal last year found 74-year-old Bernard Preynat guilty. He was removed from ministry in 2015. And in Mexico, Catholic bishops are asking lawmakers to end the statute of limitations for cases involving the abuse of minors. Currently, charges are not considered 10 years after the alleged incident. The church accepts accusations up to 20 years after the victim becomes an adult. Around 150 priests in the Catholic country have been removed from ministry over misconduct.
Coming up, on International Religious Freedom Day, we hear about ways to help persecuted Christians. And the Trump administration addresses school prayer.
A small group of diverse faith leaders met in Rome to advance sustainable peace and mutual respect. In a closed-door dialogue over a day and a half, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim leaders discussed concrete methods to increase support for religious freedom, human dignity, and equal justice around the world. This is the first of many encounters that was sparked by a document by Pope Francis on human fraternity for world peace that he established in Abu Dhabi last February. Ambassador Samuel Brownback, the U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, joins us now from Rome. Ambassador, thank you so much for being with us.
Happy to join you.
What concrete ways to mutual respect did you discuss in this meeting?
Well, we started with respect and recognizing the thing that most people don't talk about is that these three monotheistic faiths, these great three monotheistic faiths, all claim the same lineage from Abraham. And we want to make that lineage and that knowledge more common and then build on respect for each other to push forward with no violence between these faiths. Now, I know that's a big goal, but right now we've got really these faith divisions being used as a violence creator instead of a violence reducer around the world.
Worldwide, the persecution of Christians is reaching epidemic levels. What can we do to help our fellow Christians?
It's a good question. I think really activate is a key thing. The Trump administration has been pushing very aggressively on religious freedom and pushing this agenda of people should be free and protected to practice their faith peacefully wherever they are around the world. But I think individuals can get more active and pick a particular country or area in the world that you have interest in. Invite somebody in the United States or somewhere else around the world to come and speak at your local parish. And then I urge some parishes, and some are doing this, to actually help fund and rebuild and support communities that have been persecuted aggressively somewhere else in the world, in Nigeria, in northern Iraq, in the Balkans. You could go to a number of different places and have a tangible presence and help in those areas.
We know you're leaving today to go to Turkey to discuss religious freedom with the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, Bartholomew. What do you hope to achieve in that meeting?
Really a growing relationship between the United States and Orthodoxy. We're well connected really in the Catholic world with Vatican, and we have an ambassador, Ambassador Gingrich here. It's very active and very connected. We've connected a lot with the Protestant community, the diverse Protestant community across the United States and globally, not as much with Orthodoxy. And so really what I hope to do is to expand the formal and informal relationships. Plus, there are a lot of Orthodox Christians, particularly in the Middle East, that are heavily persecuted. We want to work more with the Orthodox Church on identifying those places and put in more support from the United States, and hopefully even get some people out of prison that have been imprisoned that are Orthodox in that region of the world.
Well, thank you so much for your insight. We really appreciate it. Ambassador Samuel Brownback, U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, President Trump wants to protect prayer in public schools. Our EWTN White House team was in the Oval Office today when the president made his announcement.
In public schools around the country, authorities are stopping students and teachers from praying, sharing their faith, or following their religious beliefs. It is totally unacceptable. You see it on the football field. You see it so many times where they're stopped from praying, and we are doing something to stop that.
President Trump wants states to notify the Education Department if schools try to block a student's right to pray. He's also trying to make it easier for religious groups to use federal money to provide social services. The president made the announcement in conjunction with Religious Freedom Day. And joining us now from the White House is Joe Grogan, assistant to the president and director of the Domestic Policy Council. Joe, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Joe, I want to start out by talking about this new guidance on prayer in public schools. Why now, and why is it important for the administration to take these steps?
Well, the guidance is supposed to be updated every 2 years by law, but hadn't been updated since 2003. And what we found when we came into the administration is a number of school districts all over the country were under the misimpression that perhaps students and teachers were not able to express their faith publicly. And that's what you saw today in the Oval Office, students and teachers sharing their stories of being discriminated against. There was a very moving story from a young woman who wanted to gather with a group of fellow students in the cafeteria and pray for a classmate and a classmate's family member who'd been in an accident, and they were informed by the principal, no, you can't do that in front of other people. You need to leave the cafeteria, do this behind a curtain or somewhere hidden. You can't be seen doing this because it might offend others. And we heard from a young woman who was Muslim who wanted to pray before meals and faced bullying from some students. And when she complained to the principal told her, no, it's your fault for your public display of faith. And really, this is unacceptable. These students have a First Amendment right to express their faith if they so choose. The Bible, the Quran, the Torah are just as legitimate to be brought into school, to be read. And these students need to be able to be appreciated, and schools are not allowed to discriminate against them, and principals are not allowed to get in their face when they do things like this. And the other thing that the secretary did in this rule is two things. One, she said, look, you need to provide students an opportunity to lodge a complaint, and you need to adjudicate those complaints. Maybe they're not all going to be legitimate, but you need to evaluate them, and you need to inform the Department of Education, how you evaluate them. And then there were other things that we're doing at the Office of Management and Budget, where we'll be sending out a memo to all federal agencies to say, look, when you distribute funds to states, you need to make sure those states do not discriminate against faith-based organizations. This is a direct result of a Supreme Court decision, the Trinity Lutheran decision, where Trinity Lutheran wanted to apply to improve their playground to make it safer, and they applied for funds, and because it was a religious organization, they were told, no, you can't do this secular purpose of making your playground more safe for kids. These laws sometimes are on the books. There are Blaine amendments in 37 states, which are a direct result of anti-Catholic bias, which anybody who understands the historical and legal record knows the history of those, why they came into being, which was really suspicion of Catholics, and they're not operative. They cannot be enforced against religious organizations when they're distributing, when they're applying for federal funds. And federal agencies need to make sure that states are not using federal funds to discriminate against organizations.
Joe, today, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to get to this question before we run out of time. Today, the administration also proposed rules to protect religious organizations. How do they help to level the playing field?
Well, the other thing is 9 federal departments are issuing rules to put religious organizations in the same level footing as secular organizations when delivering services. So the Obama administration had issued a rule that presumed that citizens who went into a religious organization for services might be offended by the religious nature of that organization, and they needed to be informed. Hey, look, if you're offended by a religious nature, we are obligated to find you a secular provider. One, it's patronizing to American citizens to presume that they may be offended by people of faith. Two, it's treating religious organizations differently. It's putting them under an additional burden that secular organizations might not face. So we made it clear that that is no longer operative, and we took that rule down and rewrote it to make it clear from all these 9 federal agencies in harmony, all at once. We're no longer going to allow that to happen, and everybody's going to operate on the same playing field.
Well, Joe, we're running out of time, but I really want to ask you this quickly. Let's talk about Religious Freedom Day and its significance, especially now, where there seems to be a growing number of attacks on the faithful, in particular those of the Jewish faith.
No question. We heard from a young woman of Jewish faith today about the discrimination she faced in public school. It's a big issue, and we all need to talk about it. Whatever your faith, and people, frankly, of no faith, should be concerned about attacks on young people of faith, on adults of faith. This is a very, very disturbing trend that we're seeing, the contempt for people of faith, discrimination on it. And the president gets this. I mean, the president wants to be part of this fight. He wants to push back. Today, he was asked about whether or not there was a cultural war going on, and he said, yes, clearly there is. When people of faith are being pushed out of the public square, pushed out of civic life, we need to push back. We need to expand that space, whether it's as simple as saying Merry Christmas again, which he's proudly saying and isn't ashamed to, but making sure that people of faith are celebrated and appreciated for expressing their spiritual lives in public if they so choose.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joe Grogan, Assistant to the President and Director of the Domestic Policy Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Pope Francis tells the faithful about a simple prayer that can get God's attention. And an update on the situation in the Philippines, where a volcano remains a threat to thousands of people.
A Philippine volcano that erupted on Sunday is still gushing smaller plumes of ash and shuddering continuously with earthquakes. Plumes of smoke continue to rise from the Taal volcano, the second most active volcano in the Philippines. Thousands of people have been forced to evacuate, and authorities are blocking access to nearby towns due to fears of a bigger eruption. This drone video shows buildings in one of the nearby provinces. It collapsed under the weight of the ash. So far, no deaths or major injuries have been reported. Joining me now to talk about how the church is helping is Monsignor Pedro Quitorio. He is the media director of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, and he joins me now by Skype from Manila. Thank you so much for joining us, Monsignor.
Yeah, Thank you, too.
You know, everyone is watching this situation very closely right now. What are you hearing from your colleagues who are on the ground about how this is impacting the areas?
Yeah, since that was January 12th until now, the situation is still the same. In fact, it's kind of getting worse because today there are already 9 towns that had been locked down. People were evacuated to about 244 evacuation centers of the church and of the government. And of the 244 evacuation centers, there are about 12,000 families, which is roughly about between 50 to 60,000 people right now in evacuation centers.
You know, we've seen the pictures of people in the Philippines lining up for food and other supplies. How is the Catholic Church helping them?
The Catholic Church is right at the center of it because it has been, in fact, the very first responder, one of the first responders, beginning last Sunday and Monday morning and until today. In fact, one of the first evacuation center was the seminary, the Divine Word Seminary of the SVDs. And the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Lipa has ordered that all churches and all facilities of the church will have to be open to evacuees, and all facilities of the church is offered to those in need.
What do you see as the greatest need right now for those in the Philippines, and how can Catholics outside of the Philippines help out?
Right now, it's been like from Monday until today, quite 4 days. All they need is water, food, clothing, medicine, and of course, hygiene kits. That's all they need. I think there are so much generosity around us right now. People are helping from other cities, from other areas, but we kind of are afraid that this may go longer than what we think, because according to the experts of volcanoes, things are moving very unusually. There have been cracks recently, about how many kilometer cracks in the soil, in the ground, and there's at least one river that has been dried up, and for them this is not so good an indicator. So they think if this will last longer, then we need help. Then we need external help.
Yeah. Well, I know this isn't the first natural disaster to hit the Philippines recently. What are you telling the faithful about, how to get through this time?
We have been very resilient. You remember in 2013, the Typhoon Haiyan, that super typhoon that killed about thousands of people. And in these last 3 months, I have myself been into 2 storms in the Visayas areas. And we have always seen this, the faith of our people gets stronger whenever we are on crisis. Our resiliency goes with our faith. I think there is some message from God why things are happening this way. We just have to see what the Lord is telling us.
Monsignor Pedro Quitorio, Media Director of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome.
Pope Francis says that there is a prayer that will always get the attention of God.
Oh Padre, io sono un peccatore, come andrò a dire questo? Meglio.
At his daily Mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father says that we should ask God for something if it is His will. The Pope says doing so is an act of confidence because we are entrusting ourselves to God and His grace. Finally tonight, a Catholic university gives a prestigious award to Alex Trebek and his wife. The host of the TV show Jeopardy used the occasion to discuss why he was reflecting on his own Catholic education while battling cancer.
If there's one thing I have discovered in the past year, it is that power of prayer. I learned it from the Jesuits when I was a kid. I learned it from the Oblates of Mary Immaculate when I was in boarding school and at college. If you have compassion in your heart, everything is possible.
Trebek was given the Founders Award by Fordham University earlier this month. He and his wife sent both of their children to Jesuit schools, including a son who graduated from Fordham in 2013. The couple also has given more than $2 million to help Fordham students who are from North Harlem and East Harlem in New York City. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We're back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.